Hey there, ladies and gents, welcome back. No points awarded for guessing what this is, because it's too obvious. We are in map making lesson number 6, and I am extremely happy. Why? I'm extremely happy to be at this point because as far as I'm concerned, this will be the final guide for now. There may be others later, but I certainly don't have any planned, which means I get to focus on all the history stuff that I'm so addicted to. My wife gets upset at time spent on that instead of on her, which, now that I say those words and listen to myself, is kind of fair enough actually. Anyway, screw her. On to the guide. This, as by now I'm sure you will have deduced because it's in the title and also because I already told you like 30 seconds ago, this is Map Guide 6, and it's all about drawing those difficult rivers down steep slopes. As always, it is at this point where I'm sure this will be a quick video. And also, as always, time will literally tell just how wrong or right I am. So let's get stuck in. And this, ladies and gentle ladies, is Fayal Island. It is one of the Azores, an archipelago of 9 islands stuck pretty much slap bang in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it is the setting for today's map guide. Oh dear God, I hope this video doesn't take me another 6 days to make. I'm dreading getting started already. Hold on one second, please, while I take a deep, very deep sigh. Okay, so, in case you're wondering, this height map was retrieved using the terraining website URL in description below. I did try multiple different height maps from multiple different sources, including many different QGIS sources, and they all sucked ass in one way or another. Whether it was incredibly low res or blocky as shit, they were all ugly. And well, this one ain't no beauty either. I mean, look at this bit. I don't like the look of this, but trust me, the others were way worse, like a lot worse. Also, what I do like about this one is that it comes with the rivers already drawn, which will be quite useful for us later. Don't worry if your height map doesn't have these pre-drawn rivers though, because you can also easily use image overlay if needed. To be honest, a good amount of maps are going to need image overlay to draw the rivers. We just got a bit lucky with this one. So that's good, we're off to a lucky start. I'm not going to be doing all of these rivers though. This is a map-making guide, not a lesson in torture and self-deprecation. I mean, just look at this screenshot from terraining. Do you see all those blue lines? I'm not drawing them all, buddy. Not a hope in hell. No chance. Zero. Zilch. So give me a second while I just smooth some of these assholes out and let's pretend they were never there. I'll keep the main stream which runs the furthest, but pretty much every single one of these tributaries can f off. Now, if you happen to live here on Fayal Island and you've just seen me delete your favorite stream that just so happens to run through your back garden, well, tough titties. Life will go on and I'm sure you will be okay. Slight tangent incoming. Is anyone else completely amazed by the fact that there's just so much water constantly streaming across our planet? I mean, just every single river, constantly. Billions of gallons of water flowing non-stop down billions of rivers. Never ceases to amaze me just how much water there is. Like this island here, just where the fuck does it all come from? I don't know, I'm a simple man amazed by simple things. Anyway, here we are now. This is Fayal Island at some point in the very near future. After global warming has stopped all the rain and the entire planet has significantly fewer rivers and streams than it did before, this is what it will look like. Don't worry, dear friends of the Azores, the water is still there. You'll just have to kill a few more of your neighbors if you want to get it before they do. And it's probably about time we started drawing these rivers, huh? Geez, I sure do waste time waffling on about unimportant shit instead of just getting to the point, don't I? I'm like my mother, you know? She does that too, been driving me mental my entire life. Am I beginning to turn into my mother? God, I hope not. I've spent my life just constantly internally screaming at her, "Mother, get to the point." Right, so in order to teach rivers today, we're going to teach 4 different methods. Number 1, reduce the flow, bro. Number 2, let's get up. Number 3, let's get down. And number 4, it's a feature, not a bug, but before we start on letting the water flow, we're going to have to draw the river. And yes, I know the river's kinda already there. However, I may as well tell you now, you can't use this. You can try, but the likelihood of this working and not becoming a mess is next to 0. But for the sake of teaching that point, let's just show you anyway. So, rule number 1, before placing our constant rate water source, we need to pause the game. Reason being that the game is preset to piss that water out of its source at a heavy rate of 20. I don't know what that 20 means though. 20 liters per second. 20 billion gallons per nanosecond. 20 bottles of piss per pint of lager drunk? Perhaps, whatever. Who knows, it has a rate of 20-something or others, and this will instantly flood everything in sight if you don't pause first. For small streams like this, we're also going to want to use that pause time to reset the radius of the water source, again to stop us from flooding and drowning everyone in sight. Not sure what I mean. Well, watch this. This is what it looks like if I place a constant water source while unpaused. As you can see, this island is now considerably wetter than it's supposed to be. Even with the source placed inside that pre-cut riverbed, it's just too much. Even if I reduce the radius of this river to something tiny, that constant rate of 20 is still too much. So I'm going to have to reduce the rate also. Truth is that when drawing rivers like this, you will rarely have to go over 1 or 2, and in fact the bare minimum of 0.035 pints per piss might also be too much. But let's keep reducing the rate anyway until we can get it to something a bit more manageable. Okay, so here my wee constant rate source at its minimum allowed rate, 0.035, and you know what, it's usually much worse. This isn't really too bad. As long as we don't count the bits downstream where it's pissing over the sides, it's okay. Not perfect, but not awful either. However, it ain't what I want, and we can see this map's pre-drawn rivers aren't continuous either. There's a few gaps where the water is overflowing because it has nowhere to go. Ironically, I'm only doing it this way first, just to show you how shit it can potentially get. Annoying then that it's not quite as shit as I was expecting. Still, that's life, and so we're going to redraw this river properly anyway. But first, let's delete that water source. We don't need it pissing all over our hard work before we're ready to release the stream. Right, finally time to redraw these rivers and make them a bit more water-friendly. Imagine a waterproof river. That's what we're going to make. So first thing I want to do is select a decent sized brush. For a small stream like this, 50 is fine. We need it to be a little bit wider than we actually want because we'll be smoothing the sides and bring the river in a little narrower later on. You'll notice also that I've chosen the Slope Terrain tool. You'll see why in a second. Finally, I'm also going to increase the brush strength to 100 because there's no point in fannying about. So I like to do this from the bottom up. So to the bottom we go. Right, now the way I lay these rivers is like this. Do you see the contour lines running up the hill? And do you see how every 10 lines it gets a little bolder, a little more black than the other lines? Well, those bold contour lines are the 10-meter marks, so each bold black line signifies that point as being 10 meters higher than the last. So what I'm going to do is this. With the Level Terrain tool brush selected, I know, I mentioned the Slope tool a moment ago, forgive my pants, I was too excited and getting ahead of myself, but with the Level Terrain brush selected, I do this. I right-click on one of those black lines to select its height, and then I go up to the next black line, and I left-click to paint that height. And then I do it again, right-click a thick black line to select its height, and left-click at the next point up to paint that selected height. And again, right-click to select, and left-click higher up to paint. And I do this following the line of the river all the way to the top. Now, it goes without saying also that if you don't have a height map with rivers pre-baked like this one, then you can, of course, use an image overlay. We covered how to use image overlay in lesson 1. Just bring in a photo with some rivers and then using this exact same method follow the rivers in the photo instead of following these ones like I am now. It is just as easy, so don't worry if your height map doesn't come with rivers like mine. Just copy the rivers from your Google Maps photo instead. And what we end up with is this, a bunch of steps with 10 meters deep hole dug into the hill following the path of that earlier river. Okay, so now what? Okay, so now we want to use that Slope Terrain tool up the top right, and it's very easy. I'm going to right-click on one of the steps I just made and then left-click and drag towards it. This will create nice slopes from one step to the next. I'll usually right-click the middle one and then left-click and drag from the two opposite side steps, just like I'm doing now. Right-click the target step and then left-click and drag towards it, and I do that all the way down the hill, hitting each step. Right-click to select target and left-click from its neighbor and drag to it. Right-click, select, left-click and drag. Got it? Good. Now do it all the way from the one end to the next. And here we have it, a nicely drawn slope from top to bottom of around 10 meters deep all the way. Okay, now to the top, and let's place another constant rate source. As always though, remember to pause the game, and while it's paused, we'll reduce its radius and strength to something a bit less likely to cause the apocalypse. And with that all done, now let's unpause the game and see how it goes. And you know what? It's not too bad. It is overflowing at some points, but that's okay because we expected that, and it gives an opportunity to teach the 4 methods discussed earlier. Because we still haven't really bloody started yet. And how far in are we now? 10 minutes? Ridiculous. All I've done is chat shit and draw one single riverbed. Anyway, that's done now, and it's finally time to learn. So do you remember? What were those 4 methods I mentioned earlier? They were, number 1, reduce the flow, bro. Number 2, let's get up. Number 3, let's get down. And number 4, it's a feature, not a bug. And so here we go. Numero uno, reduce the flow, bro. Sounds pretty self-explanatory. That source at the top is pissing out way too much water. So let's go there and reduce its flow rate. It's currently at 2 liters per cat. So let's bring it down to 1 frog per cloud. Therefore, we have, for all intents and purposes, reduced the flow, bro. And how does it look? Well, it looks better. The water is no longer overflowing so much, and that is a drastic improvement on drowning. And there we go. We have learned lesson number 1. We just turned down the water a bit. That wasn't hard now, was it? Thing is, though, with a low flow rate like this, the water is a bit thin on the surface, and with water as thin as this, it then often has an issue with just disappearing when zoomed out high enough, like this. That flow is so low that I can no longer see it from my lofty height amongst the gods, and I don't really like that. And for this reason, I generally prefer not to reduce the flow by too much. I like there to be enough water that it's deep enough to be seen from outer space, just like the Great Wall of China and my wife's arse. And also, if we look carefully, we can see that even though the flow is reduced, it's still spilling over the edges in a couple of points. So I'm going to put that flow back up to something a little higher, and we'll then deal with those overflowing points easily enough. So here we are. I've returned that source's flow rate to 1.75 whatevers. And you know what? Whilst looking from a great height, it still clips out and disappears a little bit. Not so much as before, but still ain't great. Sod it though, nobody's perfect, and raising the flow by too much is going to create bigger headaches as we go on. So we're with this 1.75 something's flow rate. Not finished though. As we can see, there are a couple of points where despite the 10-meter depth, the water just doesn't want to flow where it should, and instead it's flowing over the edges. So let's fix that. On to lessons 2, 3, and 4, right? So what was number 2 again? Let's get up. Sure thing, buddy. Don't mind if I do. Lesson 2 is very easy. We're effectively going to raise the height of the land at those points where the river is overflowing. This is one of my least favorite methods because it makes the map less authentic. And if you're using a real-world location like we are here, then ruining that authenticity ain't great. But also, what the fork am I talking about? I just less than 10 minutes ago deleted over 80% of this island's rivers, so maybe I should shut up and just get on with it. So anyway, get up, let's raise the land level and keep that water in place. This is easy enough. With the level terrain tool selected, I right-click a bit of land higher than where the water overflows, and I draw over the stream, and if it isn't high enough, then do it again with some higher land, using the smooth terrain tool. Also, I go over it a bit to make it look less crazy. It doesn't look so great when the raised height is too obvious. And so there we go, that was lesson 2. Holy shit, we're beginning to fly through this. Isn't that nice? What if you don't like number 2, though? What if a riverside filled with crazy sudden cliffs doesn't look great? Well, then we'll be wanting to employ lesson number 3. Let's get down. Down, down, D down. Down, 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 D down. Sorry, forgive me. My brain got temporarily stuck inside a late 90s EDM song, which has definitely not withstood the test of time. Anyway, on to number 3, getting down. Remember how we set all those 10-meter deep holes before drawing the river? Well, at this particular point, it just wasn't deep enough. So this time, instead of raising the height of the riverside, we're going to drop the bottom of the riverbed. So just like before, with the level terrain tool selected, we can right-click a little further down the river and then left-click back up here at the point where it overflows. We'll also use that sloping terrain tool again so it doesn't look so mad here, and give a more natural slope to the riverbed, and job done. We have, once again, stopped the water from flowing over the sides. It's a little bit ugly at the riverside, but we'll fix that later. Okay, so that's 1, 2, and 3 all out of the way. But what about lesson 4? It's a feature, not a bug. Strangely enough, this is one of my favorites, and hypocritically though, it makes the map even less authentic than number 2 did, so maybe I should just shut up, and I will. Just as soon as this video is over. In the meantime, though, we got a lesson to get through. Number 4, it's a feature, not a bug. For this one, I'm not going to stop the overflow, I'm going to ride it like Free Willy. You will see that the water, doing what water does, has already found its own path of least resistance. It's already telling us where it wants to be. If this was the real world, it would already be carving its own path down this hillside. And you know what? Who's to say this isn't one of the paths I deleted earlier? It might be. I don't know, I don't remember shit. And so I'm simply going to do what I did earlier when drawing the real river. I'm going to make those steps again all the way to the top. Right-clicking one black line and left-clicking above it to set a 10-meter deep hole, following this new river wherever it may go. Here's what it looks like for now. And then just as before, I'm going to do that terrain sloping magic from step to step all the way up my new river, just as nature probably did or did not intend. Don't worry about how shit it might look as you're going. The water takes a wee while to fit into place. If you're not sure, then always remember you can go into the water's speed settings and stick it up to 128 times to help speed the process along. And then after all that is done and dusted, we have our new river, just like this one. It's a feature, not a bug. Pretty, isn't it? This new river I just gifted to the great people of Fayal Island. I hope they appreciate it. I guess it's the least I could do after having taken away almost 300 of their other rivers and streams. The ancient swan giveth, and the ancient swan taketh away, and then giveth again, no reason, just because. Don't ask questions. Okay, so anyway, we've got this river, and it's flowing where it should, which is all well and good, but let's be honest, with those steep cliffs running all the way top to bottom, it still looks a little shit, doesn't it? Rivers just usually don't look like this. The occasional cliff, sure, but cliffs all the way down. Nah! So let's play a little game of smooth like Barry White. I don't know, man, I'm just making up names now. And that the best I could think of. I'm sorry, I'm having a slow day. Anyway, let's smooth the edges. Now to do this, I'm going to reduce the strength of the brush, because if that brush is too strong, then we can end up smoothing the edges too much, and in turn then widening the river far beyond what we actually want. So with a brush at around 60% strength and reduced to only 30 radius, we'll go up and down these river sides, bring in some slopes and making them a little bit more natural looking. You should play around with this though. Different radius and different strengths will depend on your river's particular needs. Maybe you need more, maybe you need less. Play around and find out what fits for the river you're drawing. Also, as you're going along smoothing the edges, you may well lose control of your riversides and again see water overflowing once more. If this happens, then just repeat one of the lessons we've just been through and all will be beautiful. And here we have it. One, actually, no scratch. That two beautifully smooth, difficult rivers falling down a hill, but we're not quite done yet, almost, but not quite. Thing is, if we look at the top of this river at its source, it's kind of gushing out there like a waterfall right out of the land. And, well, springs don't usually look like that. A water spring, the source where it emerges from the land, is generally a bit smaller. It tends to leak out a little more than it tends to piss out there, like me, after 10 pints at the local pub. So let's fix that too. So that's easy enough using a mixture of the land tools. I'm going to lower, raise and redraw that little area where the land comes out, bring it more to a tapered point instead of such a wide mouth, and make it look just a little bit more natural. Doesn't have to be perfect, of course, but it is nice if it doesn't look like crap. That's my motto in life, just don't be crap. It has gotten me surprisingly far until now, and when you are crap, then fall back on plan number 2, and that is hide the crap, make it look as though it doesn't exist, and say your prayers. Nobody looks below the surface. Problem while doing this is that 1.75 buckets of piss per rainfall constant rate that we have set. It's much easier with a lower rate, but it is what it is. And after all this faffing about, we have come to this. It still doesn't look great, but it's better than the gaping wide hole it was before. And don't worry also, because according to life rule number 2 mentioned a moment ago, we can hide it further. We'll plop down some trees and some rocks, and before you know it, this thing will look like the Garden of Eden. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, the world's most beautifully natural looking, though strangely still a bit too wide, water spring, as voted for by me. Thank you. Now, here's the thing. I got to be truthful with you people now. You see that bit I just did there just now, making the source a bit more narrow? Well, and actually it's much easier to do that right at the beginning, before you place the water source. I mean, much easier to do it at the beginning. Doing it at the end here like I just did is much more of a pain in the ass. Truth is though, I just forgot until it was too late. But anyway, this is what it looks like if you remember to do it at the start. And it's very easy. You can just use the slope terrain tools to click, select and draw a nice tapered point to your riverbed before you lay the source. So anyway, you should probably do that instead of forgetting like I did. Fortunately though, on this map I have another bazillion rivers to draw and remember on, and here we now are, comfortably looking at one of the island's most beautiful rivers, also, not by coincidence, voted on solely by me. Now don't mind me for an hour or two, because now I've got to go and do all the rest, just like I did this one. And although I did a good job of lessening the workload by magically deleting most of them already, a decent amount of them still exist. I'm counting something like 15 of the fuckers still to be done. So I'm gonna go do that. Don't mind me, just take a second. And done! This is how the beautiful island of Fayal looks after I have spent some hours, aka days, making it all look so pretty. Rivers and streams galore, none of them overflowing and all of them flowing downhill. If you are interested in a deeper look at this map, then feel free to follow the link below to grab the free map from the Paradox Mods site. And that's all for me today. Beautiful souls of the YouTube interweb. That's also the final map-making guide, all done, dusted, produced, published and spammed onto every forum and website that will let me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, otherwise I declare you my enemy and war shall commence. Right, I'm off ski. Peace, love and Azores. Good! Bye!